Hey guys, you know a few months ago my microphone broke and I had to use a new one? Well, it happened again, so this time I'm using a gaming headset, so hopefully this actually sounds good to you guys. I feel like every time I get a new microphone, my voice just ends up sounding more and more nasally. Now, a few years ago, I made a video called The Fall of the Anti-Sjw Community, and it's my only political video that's monetized, which just seems a little bit suspicious. I mean, all my anti-SJW videos get demonetized, but when I make an anti-SJW video, suddenly it's monetized. I guess for once I wasn't guilty of wrongthink. So in part 1, I mostly went over the birth of the anti-SJW community. It came from atheists and gamers because of, obviously, Gamergate, and atheists because of Atheism Plus. And I went over some of how the bigger anti-SJWs were fucking up, people like Mundane Matt, Atheism is Unstoppable, and Crowd and T. Now, I would like to briefly correct a mistake I made. I said that Gamergate started because of Anita Sarkeesian, and while it is definitely not true that Gamergate started because of her, to me it really took off because of her. But feel free to disagree with me in the comment section. I also would like to explain what an anti-SJW is, because in my last video I got a lot of comments like, that person's not an anti-SJW, they're an atheist, or that person's not a part of the anti-SJW community, they're a skeptic. Now, I want to make this clear, when I say anti-SJW, I'm using it as a blanket term, whether they're a skeptic, an atheist, or hell, maybe even a Leafy clone. If a decent amount of their content is about bashing the far left, whether it be feminism, the more extremist parts of BLM, or the LGBT community, then that's what I mean by anti-SJW. If I talk about someone who doesn't identify as an anti-SJW or doesn't associate with the community anymore, they are perfectly within their right to identify however they want. But I'm still going to call them what they are. Oh god, people are going to take that last part out of context and use it as proof that I'm transphobic. And the last thing I want to say before I get on with this video is that I used to be an anti-SJW, but despite that I'm still going to get a bunch of comments calling me an SJW and a NPC because they won't even bother watching the video. A lot of people have asked me, do I still stand by what I said in my older videos, and what I gotta say is, I still stand behind about 90% of it. But what are the 10% of things I've said in the past that I don't stand behind? Whatever it is the 10% you don't agree with me on, that's the 10% I don't stand behind. Now, I first discovered the anti-SJW community when it was just kicking off. Growing up, I was homeschooled in an extremely Christian conservative family, and I hated it. And while I didn't like the far-right Christian conservatives, I also didn't really like the far-left liberals. No, God, I'm not apologizing for Adam eating from your special tree that you told him not to, and I'm also not apologizing for being born white. A lot of my hardcore Christian conservative friends ended up becoming left-wing atheist. They made fun of things like George Bush, the Tea Party, Fox News, and other right-wing things. But then, seemingly out of nowhere, they started going after the far left. But why is that? Well, it's because they started seeing the far left as even worse than Christian conservatives. Let's talk about Horseshoe Theory. You've probably seen many people strawman Horseshoe Theory, saying that the theory claims the far left and the far right are exactly the same. Anyone who makes this argument either doesn't understand Horseshoe Theory or they're a disingenuous liar. Horseshoe Theory states that the far left and far right are closer together than a typical conservative or Democrat. When I think of a classic Christian conservative, I think of a guy who doesn't like gay marriage, probably doesn't like abortion, wants lower taxes and stuff like that. When I think of a Democrat, I think of the opposite. When I think about the far left and far right, I think of people protesting and doing a lot of property damage, comparing me to the people they hate the most, whether it be communist or fascist, and, you know, other stuff like that. So let's use Horseshoe Theory to compare these two separate groups. Christian conservatives say you should never ever use the Lord's name in vain. The far left, or as I'll call them from here on out, SJWs, say you can't use the N-word, the derogatory term for a homosexual F-word, and some will even say you can't use a whole bunch of other different words, even the word stupid.
Either all of them are okay, or none of them are okay.
Let's say a Christian conservative wants you to believe what they believe. They might invite you to their church, suggest you watch Fox News, or maybe they'll come up to your door and tell you that you're going to hell. A left-winger, on the other hand, will actually insert themselves into your community. You want to talk about video games? Well, now we have to talk about how video games can cause sexism and racism and the underrepresentation of LGBT characters. Almost every community has one of these. Gaming, of course, has Anita Sarkeesian and other people like her. My Little Pony has Lily Pete, now known as Lily Orchard. Even reviewers do this. I remember I was watching this review about robots, and they were trying to talk about how the movie Robots is anti-capitalism and anti-gender binary because the bad guy is an evil rich businessman, and all the upgrades are just two different binaries of everybody looking the same. So basically, this movie has the same plot as literally every movie ever. I'm not gonna lie, I almost covered this person's video, but I stopped myself before I did because I didn't want to get into a whole thing. So it's not hard to see why a lot of the atheist channels stopped talking about the right wing and started going after the left wing. Although not all of them did, people like Steve Shives still tried to fight against them, but the overwhelming majority of YouTube atheists switched to talking about the left wing. If you combine that with Gamergate, which brought a whole bunch of gamers together, well, now it will incentivize even more atheist channels to stop talking about the right wing and start going after the left wing. Because if gamers start watching atheists cover SJWs, a group they also hate, that's going to make the atheist YouTubers so much more money. At this point, the anti-SJW community was mostly made up of left-wingers. People like Shoe-on-Head, The Amazing Atheist, Armored Skeptic, Sargon of Akkad. Yes, he actually used to be a lot more left-wing. And of course, Thunderfoot. Don't get me wrong, there were a few right-wingers like Bearing and Undoomed, but it was mostly made up of left-wing people. Over time, the anti-SJW community grew more and more. It had right-wing trans people like Blair White, Bernie bros like Chris Ray Gunn. It didn't matter if you were right-wing, left-wing, libertarian, socialist, or even apolitical. Everybody was hopping on the anti-SJW bandwagon. Many people like Grade A Undera, Leafy is Here, Killer Keemstar, H3H3, iDubbbz, Filthy Frank, and so many others were parodying SJW talking points in their own videos. Even motherfucking PewDiePie started using some of their talking points in memes. It seemed for a moment that their growth would never end. But, as it is with all groups that are anti-something, they started having infighting. You see, whether a group is anti-fascist, anti-communist, anti-anything in general, at first they'll start to push that group back. But then, once that group they're pushing back starts to get weaker and weaker, they start wanting to replace it with something. And what is that thing they want to replace it with? Well, their own ideology, of course. But of course, a lot of anti-whatever don't agree with each other. It's kind of like how both anarchists and tankies are anti-capitalism, but of course, without capitalism to fight, they'll start fighting with each other.
Is this about the time I kill the anarchists? No, it's just about you being a piece of shit.
It's hard enough to get dark-skinned guys and light-skinned guys to get along with each other. It's hard enough to get gays to get along with lesbians. There are so many different branches of feminism that don't get along with each other. And when you try to get all these three groups to work with each other, along with throwing Muslims in there, well, it's not hard to see why the Conservative Party has stayed in power for so long. What I'm trying to get across is that the Conservative Party really gets along with each other. A lot of them agree on the same things, while most leftists are just anti-conservatives. A lot of people thought the Conservative Party was going to be destroyed, and then the Democratic Party was going to split into two different parties. Obviously, that didn't happen. That's because every time the Conservative Party is defeated, leftists start dividing amongst each other, and it becomes weaker. A lot of anti-SJWs really hated Hillary. And while a lot of them weren't exactly the biggest fans of Trump, they hated Hillary a lot more, which of course pissed Thunderfoot off, and he started arguing with a lot of them. After a while, he got into a drama with Sargon of Akkad and left the anti-SJW community. Because of Trump getting elected, a lot of political YouTubers were getting their, well, channels entirely demonetized. Tumblr got shut down, which originally seemed like a victory for the anti-SJWs, but a lot of them migrated to Twitter, and Twitter affects YouTubers and celebrities' lives a lot more than Tumblr ever did. Conservatives were inserting themselves into the anti-SJW community. People like Louder with Crowder, Milo Yiannopoulos, Ben Shapiro, Paul Joseph Watson, Tucker Carlson, and so many others. Charlottesville happened, which was really bad. You see, originally leftists would say things like, "There are Nazis and right-wing rioters everywhere, can't you see it?" But the only thing they could ever point to was Gamergate, or saying that certain mass shooters had this or that ideology, like claiming that Elliot Rodger was a men's rights activist.
I don't know what you don't see in me. I'm the perfect guy, and yet you throw yourselves at all these obnoxious men.
Some even claimed he was the first alt-right shooter ever, which he isn't. He existed before the alt-right, or at least before it actually got big. Speaking of the alt-right, people like Crowd and T, Wosley, and many other anti-SJW channels all went to war with the alt-right, and failed pretty spectacularly. At least there's a happy ending for Crowd and T. Now he's known as Crowd, and he's really big now. I guess the old saying is true, the right wing really can't cancel you. Combine that with BreadTube and a lot of anti-SJW channels getting deleted. Yeah, they couldn't fight all these things off at once, and they slowly started crumbling bit by bit. The final two heavy hits they faced was George Floyd and the White House raid. A lot of anti-SJWs also made a lot of videos about BLM, and most of them weren't exactly all that positive. And George Floyd's I Can't Breathe was a lot more effective than Hands Up, Don't Shoot. Now, what did the White House raid have to do with the anti-SJW community? Well, basically nothing. But the point is, now a lot more people were pissed off at the right wing. So much so that they saw the far left as the lesser evil of the two. Chris Reagan did a pretty good job comparing Hillary supporters in 2016 to Trump supporters in 2020. So I really recommend checking that out.
Liberals are pissed off. We're still happy and having fun. I find it hysterical.
This one was invented by a writer.
I've only had 2 hours of sleep in 2 days. Like you, I'm pissed, ornery, and physically and mentally exhausted.
Remember how I brought up Horseshoe Theory earlier? Well, let's use it again. When Hillary lost, leftists said that it was due to the Russian hack. When Trump lost, Trump supporters claimed it has something to do with the election being rigged through mail-in votes. Hillary supporters, of course, did the pussy hat protest, and Trump supporters raided the fucking White House. I'm not gonna lie, I swear it was the White House raid and not the Capitol raid. I guess this must be one of those Mandela effects. But Jar, I don't agree with Horseshoe Theory. Good for you, it doesn't matter because centrists do. And centrists are always the ones who tip the balance of power. You had other bad things happening to the anti-SJW community, like Blair White dealing with a massive drama. Or a lot of anti-SJWs going after Shoe on Head and Chris Reagan.
2016, Shoe on Head and I were called Nazis by left-wing people for talking to right-wing people. In 2020, Shoe on Head and I are called communists by right-wing people for talking to left-wing people.
Why? Well, it's because they were Bernie bros, and they turned their back on their principles, even though they were doing the exact same thing in 2016. God, you can even use Horseshoe Theory with this and compare it to the whole Lacey Green thing. Many anti-SJWs have left, either they became more right-wing, more left-wing, some even flipped sides and became SJWs themselves. Others quit entirely. A good example is Armored Skeptic. He privated basically all of his anti-SJW videos. I don't know why, and I don't care to know. The anti-SJW community is still around, but it's far less strong than it used to be. But hey, at least they have the quartering. But now that the anti-SJW community only has a fraction of the power they used to have, well, a lot has changed on YouTube. And while you could argue that some of it is for the better, cancel culture is more out of control than it ever was before. A lot of my YouTube friends are currently terrified of getting canceled. I try to get a lot of my other friends into YouTube, but they're just too scared of cancel culture to get involved, even when their politics are super left-wing. Cancel culture is just getting worse and worse. Without the anti-SJWs for them to focus on, well, they're just going to focus on centrist and normal people. Do I think the anti-SJW community will make a comeback? Kind of. I think over time, cancel culture is going to become so rampant that a new group similar to the anti-SJWs will be formed. Maybe they'll be called the anti-cancellation group or something like that. And they'll have remnants of the anti-SJW community within them. But of course, hindsight is 20/20. We'll just have to wait and see what happens.